I think we're live. There we go. Being live streamed. Hello, friends. Sorry that I am a little bit late today, but we are going to be doing office hours, and it's awesome. So let me just paste this link in there. So office hours, if you've never been here before, is your opportunity to ask me questions about anything, and I will do my very best to answer those questions. I just realized my water bottle's got a bunch of water stains on it. Whoops. So I give priority to people who are in the Zoom call, but if you can't be in the Zoom call, if you're not able to be here when office hours happens, you can just stick it in the KCD Office Hours channel on Discord, and I will do my best to answer based on the information that you give me. But yeah, again, I will prioritize people who are in the Zoom call. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Anybody in the Zoom call have a question that they want to start us out with?
I did. I'm
Hello.
partial. Name is wrong. I just pasted it in the Discord if that helps at all, or I can just explain it.
Yeah, let me take a look. Your Parsa?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me read the question really quick, and then you can fill any gaps I've got. Creating a hook for filtering, in my case, a massive array of data getting loaded in the app. The data is not something I can save to any database. I'm guessing that was data, right? Not data.
Yes.
Okay. It's coming from a single endpoint, does not come with metadata that would make, okay. The hook needs to receive this massive response and generate possible filter values as well as the actual function to filter based on each value. For example, if we're dealing with shoes, to find out the brands and sizes, filtering according to that. Okay. The main issue is it can't save dispatch functions like set state inside other states, and I need to because the filter function. Okay, so this, to me, this sounds like you don't want to save this in state because this is going to be derived state. So this is you've got the data, you've got some functions that can filter that, and on the other side is all the data you have on the other side is like can be derived through that chain, taking the raw data filter and that. Now, because it's a lot of data, you might not want to have to do that. And well, here, actually, let me show you in which workshop was this? React. Yeah, hooks. So in the React hooks workshop, we talk about this in, I think it's exercise, maybe it's exercise 4. Yeah. So here is an example, and actually the extra credit 3 is probably too much. Let's do this one. Okay, so you've got this board. This is a tic-tac-toe board, and we have our, actually, let's do extra credit 1 before we bring in local storage. So let's just do the actual solution. Here we go. That's the simplest version of this. So we've got our squares, and then based on the current state of the squares, like this is an array of 9 elements, and each will have an empty string, a 0, or an O, or an X, so that we know who's in, selected which squares. So based on just that array, we can know who the next value is based on like, okay, how many X's and O's are there? We can know who the winner is. So like what, if they've gotten 3 in a row or whatever. And we know the status based on the winner and what the next value is. So like, is it a player's turn, or is it a scratch game, or do we have a winner? All right, we can derive all of these things just by knowing what the squares are. So that the squares would be like your raw data, and then these functions would be like your filter functions. So this is by far the simplest way to solve this problem. And I've got a blog post that actually does talk about this. Don't sync state, derive it. It just makes this solving this problem really simple. Now, the problem that you're going to face with a lot of data is that these functions are going to be not fast. With a lot of data, you're iterating all of those over all of these items and everything. So the first solution to anything that's not fast is to make it fast. So there are things that you could probably do, like hocus pocus, to make it faster. so as soon as you've made it as fast as you possibly can, and you realize it's still not fast enough, then you, well, I mean, you could proxy it. If you were using Remix, you could actually have the server do all of this, this computation stuff, so that it's at least on a beefier machine than somebody's mobile phone, right? So like that's another option that I think would be even better. But let's assume that you like it's all client side, only client side, and we've got these functions. That's when you bring in memoization. And so what you would do in this case is you'd say react.useMemo, and you'd pass the squares as the memoization thing. My guess, it sounds like once you've loaded the data, you're actually not like loading more data. That data doesn't change during the lifetime of at least that screen. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so that's cool, because what that means is even though these functions are going to be computationally expensive, you're only paying that expense once because you can memoize it, and you memoize it based on the data, which almost never changes, and so it should be pretty fast thereafter to re-render and stuff. However, I should say that anytime somebody, if anybody like changes the filter or something, now, yeah, you're going to need to run those filter functions again. And so every time they do that, it is going to incur the cost. And this is why you want to make it as fast as possible before just slapping memoization all over the place, because it does need to run at some point, and it'd be nice if when it runs, it's fast. So anyway, does that answer your question? Is that give you a
It
direction to
does.
go?
I just realized I might have left off one piece of complication, and that is there's multiple flows that would kind of follow the same thing, but the data looks different. So I was trying to make a hook that would just get all those callbacks and deal with like creating the states and returning all the callbacks and stuff. So this what you just showed me would be suiting just one of those. So I would have to create multiple for each one of the flows for each one of the like the data structures. Would it be possible to create like a common format and then pass in callbacks to filter?
Yeah, totally. And you wouldn't need it to be a hook either. It could just be functions, because unless those functions need to access state for some reason, or use effect or something, which it doesn't sound like that would be advisable in, for this particular problem, then yeah, you just well, unless you decide that you want to hide all of the memoization in those, then that's like, here, you know what, might be easier if I pull this
That's what
up.
I was trying to do. Just hide all the memoization in the hook and just return a
Yeah,
bunch
so
of.
you're going to run into a problem with that really fast. Let me show you why. So if we're looking at this, so we've got this create next value, and I was saying react.useMemo, and then you got squares. Okay, so that's great. But what if this calculate next value takes some you know, direction for like the sort order or something? Like, we'll just make that up, right? So we've got our direction is ascending, right? But that's controlled by state. That's like you use state, and the user can change the ascending order, whatever, right? Okay, so if you decide, hey, you know what, I don't want to have people have a use memo. Well, sorry, of course, we're going to need dirt right there. So that was what we were talking about. Every time they change that, it's going to recalculate. We're going to, which is what it should do, right? But that could be a performance issue there. So now what you're trying to say is, okay, well, this is fine, but I don't want to have to do this everywhere. Like in all of the places that I'm going to be needing to do a filter, like that would be annoying. So we're going to have this use filter thing that takes my filter, which is some sort of callback, and then it's going to do all of this stuff, except genericizing it with the filter. And here's my data. Here, maybe it takes the data as well. Great. So then we've got that filter. And of course, Dan Ambermoff is going to get mad at us here with the ESLint rule, where it says, hey, you need your filter in there. Okay, that's fine. That makes sense. So return, maybe you do a couple more things in here, but probably not. That's probably as far as that's going to go. And so now you say, use filter thing. Here's my squares, and here's my function that's going to take the squares, and it's going to call create next value there, right? Okay. So that's our use filter thing. So that works. What is this? Oh, right. This is also going to need the data, right? Okay. So that's going to be fine, except that every single re-render, and even if we're re-rendering because this like something else, the squares didn't change, they just changed a filter on something else, right? Maybe we've got a bunch of these, and so like the filter, the check boxes are checked for something else completely unrelated. This is going to rerun every render, even though it's actually not changing, because this function is new every time. So every time we run, make a new function, pass it to the use filter thing, and use memo is like, oh, okay, so data didn't change, but the filter did, but it actually didn't. Like the things that matter for the filter, all that matters for the filter is this dir variable. So we didn't actually change anything. The function is the same. However, it's gonna trigger a recalculation, which is not good. So there are two solutions to this. One is we take this, extract it to a new like my filter function, and then we memoize this. So we say React use callback, and then we pass dir there. So now we're n squares. Well, hold on. This should be squares because that data is being passed along, right? So so that's one solution, but I feel like we just moved things around and made it worse, right? Because like before it was really simple. It was just a single line of use memo. Is like, that's fine. Now we have a use callback, and now that's annoying. So the other option that you could do is instead you use what I call the latest ref pattern. This was Yago in the community came up with the name for this one. And I wrote a blog post about it. So before you, well, I mentioned it in here, but you need to make sure that you understand what this blog post is talking about before you actually use this. So I'll provide both of these here, and actually I'll put this all in the same reply right there. So this pattern is pretty straightforward. It basic, yeah, this is it. That's the whole pattern right there. So we're gonna just do this. We have a callback that we want to keep a reference to. We always want to have the latest version of that callback. And then instead of using filter here, we're gonna say callback ref. And so now we don't need to pass the filter as part of our memoization. And so what that means is now we can go back to what we had before, and we get that experience. Okay, so there are trade-offs with this approach because let me think if that would apply in our situation. I don't think it would actually apply in our circumstance, but it can apply. So not in our situation, but it's important to understand what this is talking about before you start using this pattern. I'll also mention that the use event hook that's upcoming in React is basically this. So in the future version of React, you could say, my thing is use event, and then you'd pass filter. I think that's probably how it'd be, and it'd be React.use event. And then you just pass my thing here. Pretty sure that's how that'll work. And then you won't have, well, you could pass my thing here and it would work just fine. But anyway, that's not released yet. Doesn't really matter. So now the decision is, so considering that you're probably not going to run into problems with this approach, and it seems to work, which would I recommend? Should you go with this, or should you go with React.use memo squares? For me, this is way simpler. I would 100% all the time go with just the use memo right there. There's no abstraction to dive into and understand and learn for your coworkers or yourself in the future. It's just like, oh, it's just a use memo. I know how that works. And if I don't know how that works, then I need to learn it because I'm in a React code base and I need to know how that works. And so if I look at this and I'm like, I don't know how that works, do I need to learn that? I don't know. Maybe it's used a lot. Maybe it's not. It's certainly not used outside of this code base. And so like I tend to like, let's avoid building an abstraction here. That's actually another blog post that I'll hand to you here too is avoid hasty abstractions, because when you start building the abstraction, it can grow bigger than the needs of the many to serve the needs of the few. Well, I gotta tweet that one's good. So I would recommend just going with use memo, even though it feels like, oh, that's boilerplate. Yeah, kind of, maybe a little bit. Yeah, I know that like maybe the solid JS folks would be like, yeah, you don't have to do that in solid, or Svelte would probably be the same thing. But like, hey, we're in React here. We're making money shipping real apps. Sorry, I shouldn't have said it that way. I'm sure there are plenty of people shipping real apps with solid and Svelte. But what I mean is like the vast majority of apps today are written in React, and we've got to deal with what we've got. And what we have is this use memo boilerplate, which honestly, I don't think it's that much boilerplate. Sure would be nice if we didn't have to do it this way, but this is what we've got. And between these two options, I feel like we're way better off with this one. So,
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And it could be that I'm missing some of the complexity of your specific situation. And so feel free to ignore my suggestion, but that's where I land right now.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing. Cool. Anybody else? And if you do have a question and you're in the Zoom and you don't want to unmute yourself, you just want to chat it, that's fine. Just put it in the Discord, because the Zoom chat does not get persisted and stuff. I like having it here for historical reasons and things. So yeah, anybody else in Zoom have a question?
Can you hear me, Ken?
Yeah.
Hi. I raised a question about, so it is in the KCD, it's from UV, and it's using downshift component.
This one?
Yep, that one.
Okay, cool. Reset the checkboxes, select the item state. So first I'll say it's been like maybe 4, possibly 5 years since I've actually maintained downshift. Somebody else is taking it over and they're doing an excellent job. I did not build any of the hooks, but I did build a lot of utilities that it's using. So anyway, I just preface it with saying I might not be able to help you out, but we'll see.
No, I think it's a React problem rather than a library problem. The more and more I'm looking at it.
Okay, so let's go with current module view. If one element selected. Okay, so I don't understand how this one works. Let's see. Because I would expect like something to show up here, but nothing's showing up. So you've got your menu. Yeah, see, I'm not getting any menu showing up when I do that. Choose an element. Oh, here we go. Oh, okay, I see. So what you're trying to build is like you've got this input, and then you have like a drop down button that'll open up the menu if people want. Is that right?
No, actually not. So if you look, so those are 2 different fields. So one of them is a text, just a normal HTML input field. Okay. So what I'm demonstrating here is if you were to type anything on the text field, then choose an element on the choose an element, for example. Yep. Now, if you reset it, the text field gets reset.
Resetting this.
Yes. Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, so on click, we do props reset form. This is coming from Formic. Yep. And so your question is, how do I get this drop down select, which is using downshift, to reset when Formic is resetting the form? Yeah,
that's true.
Got it. Okay. Well, I don't know what Formic does when we say reset form, but my guess is that it is. Well, here let's find out. Let's do this. I don't know how well this will work, because sometimes this sort of thing works with Code Sandbox, and sometimes it really doesn't. So we'll just have to see here. Oh, come on. Good grief. Yeah, man. Code Sandbox, it really feels like we're so close to something amazing, but yeah, we're super duper not. Like it just it basically never works for me. Maybe there's something weird with my machine, but anyway, this would be something that I would try is like stick a debugger in there, and then I would be able to dive in to see what the reset form function does. My guess is that
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off there. My interpretation of it is it goes back to the initial phase of the values from the reading the documentation and things like those. So for example, if you were to stick a value on the name component, so just on line 115, just put something. Yep. Now if you, yep.
Got it. Okay. And then when you reset, you want that to reset. Okay. So then the props here, we have the initial selected items. Got it. Okay. So, okay. Got it. This is what we need to do. We need to control the selected items. And yeah, values element. Okay, and then we come up here. And then, yeah, let's get rid of that. Okay, pretty sure this should work. So then I change it to this, and we do that and reset, and it's back. That's what it is.
Wow.
So anytime you want to programmatically control the value of a downshift input or anything that simulates the control props pattern, you like if you need to programmatically change that value, you need to be in control of it. And you were halfway there because you had this on selected item change that would update the currently selected item. And so that state is actually being managed by Formic. So, well, actually, no, it's being managed by you. You're setting the user data on submit and things. But in any case, you hand that initial value to Formic. And so now Formic has got some state that it's hanging on to. And when you say reset, it's like, okay, let me take that initial state and I'll pass that along to these props. And so now we can say, okay, well, here's the selected item. And whenever we change this value, we have that handle selected item change. We say prop set field element, here's the value. That goes through the whole Formic thing, and Formic's like, oh, okay, let me go update that that value in the state that I'm managing. We re-render, we get the props, and now the props value element is going to include the one we just changed it to. And so we just needed to go all the way and say, no, it's not just the initial. It's like I'm in control all the time.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah,
cool.
Sorry. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad that we were able to figure that out, even with Code Sandbox. Don't tell Evis that I said that about Code Sandbox. I feel bad. Like I was always so supportive, but it's just, it really has not been, great for me. But I'm glad that it's great for other people. Okay, great. Anybody else in the Zoom have a question, or should I head over to Discord?
Hi, Ken. Hi,
Edmund.
Have a question. I pasted in the channel. If you scroll a little bit, so this actually I pasted 2 questions. If I hope that's okay, but if not, we can just look at the second one, which is a little bit further. Yes, this one.
Yeah, I can look at them both, but we'll look at the second one first.
Okay, sure. So this one is about the use callback hook. I stumbled upon this library, the React to Print library, and in its code base, I saw that they are using use callback in a pretty interesting way. So I just want to know whether this is a good usage of it, because to me, they are just passing this function into the React print component. This is just an example. So they are passing that function into the actual React to the print component. I mean, is it? So I'm just wondering, is it? Do we even need to use callback here, just for, or is it just unnecessary?
Yeah, this is, oh, I don't know what the React to Print component is or what it does, but the only time that you need to use callback there are two times, two situations, and I've got a blog post about this.
It's when you're using it as a dependency list, one of the use cases.
Yes. Yep. If you're using it in a dependency list, then yes, you should probably be memoizing that. Yeah. And then the other one is to not break memoization of other things. So that's kind of like, that's sort of the dependency list argument, but it also applies to use effects as well. But like memoization of a memoized component like react.memo component. So maybe React to print is a memoized component, and so they don't want to break it, and so they have to use callback everywhere. What a nightmare of an API to work with, but I mean, if that's the API they gave you, then that's the one you use. Like, I would hate to have something that just requires so much memoization, but maybe this React to print component is just a really computationally expensive for some reason. Yeah, who knows? I'm not going to figure it out. But
right, understand.
yeah,
I'm just wondering if would it have been a better approach for the component itself to handle the memoization of incoming functions rather than expecting the users to pass
so I mean, the challenge is that you can't really do that, because as the consumer, you actually have no control over what the callbacks are using, what the callback dependencies are. So like, well, for one, the set loading and set text, it's unnecessary to put in callback because those two are going to be stable for sure. But yeah, like this could be accessing other variables or whatever, who knows? And so you certainly don't as the implementer of the API. And so it's not possible for you to memoize it for them. But it would be possible to just always grab the latest version of the function and ignore the rest. But that does lead to problems. Like that's inverting the default. And that actually comes right back to this blog post. So if you understand this blog post and you know the trade-offs that you're making, then yes, you can implement the latest ref pattern as we talked about earlier, and avoid people having to send memoized callbacks. This is actually how useQuery works. useQuery is capable of accepting regular functions that aren't memoized, even though it uses those in dependency arrays, because it uses the latest ref pattern. So that is an option that you've got, that you could do, is use the latest ref pattern, or like in this case, I would say like it doesn't seem like React to print really needs these to be memoized. And so I would totally not memoize these. This is a very sadly common practice though, where they just say memoize everything, and it's super wrong. It's very wrong. Read this blog post, and then like send that to your team lead who's telling you you have to memoize everything, because they're wrong. So
anyway. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Next question. Okay, sweet. I'll move over to Discord. Feel free to interrupt me if you're here in Zoom and do have a question. Coming up here, yep, looks like this is the latest one. Redirected by the KCD bot. Yes, it works. I'm able to answer way more questions this way. Form testing question. Here's the code and a login component. When testing, how do I get the form submission value when my onSubmit function is located within the login? Okay, yeah, this is a great question. And actually, just in case they're not watching, I'm answering this on the stream now. Okay, so yeah, why am I asking? The only difference between the above exercise final code and my project is my onSubmit function is located within the component. The login component for this case, I'm trying to apply the knowledge, but I can't see. Yeah, actually, you know what? That sounds a lot like, let's see, GitHub topics, testing JavaScript. And it is, I think this one, yeah, pretty sure. And if we go into source tests, we've got, I think this one might be one that we want to look at. And Shoot. Here, let's do login. No? Oh, maybe I'm looking at the wrong one then. Not gonna be that one. Shoot, no, where is it? Maybe it isn't. Maybe this is the one we're looking at. I didn't think so though. Oh no, that's right. We have an on submit. No, we don't accept. No, where is it? Do we have another one in here? I don't remember. But I literally do have content specifically about what you're talking about. And I can't remember where it is. I'm pretty sure it's in testing JavaScript. And I'm pretty sure it's in the testing React, but it doesn't look like I've got anything in there. Rats. Okay, maybe it's in. Oh no, here it is. Login submission. Ta-da! So I've got the exact same situation here. We've got this login submission component. That's the one we're testing. And it is rendering the login that has the on submit. So it's the one in charge of the submit stuff. And it actually makes a call to this endpoint. This is all just like made up stuff that I did for our demo purposes. So all that we have is this component. That's exactly what you're describing. Like my on submit is like making the fetch request. So how do I test that? So what you're looking for is a different exercise. If we go to, I think 5, then this will do it. Yeah, this is the one. Ta-da! So you have this login submission component there. That's the word. And with this, we have our fake login form, and we are setting up a server. It's not actually a server. It's a fake server using MSW that will intercept any HTTP calls that are made. And instead of actually making those calls, it will allow you to respond. And so I've got my handlers in this server handlers file. Actually, let's go. I think 3. We probably don't have it in the. No, probably 2. Nope, those handlers are in there. Where the heck are those handlers coming from? Probably right there on this one. There we go. Okay, so this is how this works from the get-go. You have the setup server function where you're using some MSW utilities to say, hey, when there's a post to this URL, this is what you should do. Instead of actually making that post, I want you to act like the backend would act. So if we get a no password, then we do password required. If we get no username, we do username required. Yes, it does kind of feel a little bit like you're re-implementing your backend, but of course it's going to be way simpler. But yeah, some of the validation logic you will be sort of re-implementing because what you're trying to do is make sure that your front end responds properly when the back end does its validation logic. So it stands to reason that you're going to do this. Like if you don't want the back end to actually run, you need something that runs like your back end. So anyway, if it's successful, then it doesn't actually authenticate or anything. It just responds the same way that the backend would respond. So that is what you do. And then you render the thing, you perform this stuff the way that the user would, and then you make your assertions. That's it. So the question about like, how do I test this is never like, you never think about the code first. You think about the user experience first. What is the user going to do? Where are the boundaries that I'm drawing as far as mocking is concerned? And in our case, we don't want to actually call the server. And so when we define those boundaries, we say everything on the other side of those boundaries, I'm going to have to write code for, but everything on the inside of those boundaries, I'm going to just let that thing happen the way that it does. And so, yeah, on the outside of the boundary, we are going to call render like that. That's kind of the outside. We're actually sort of behaving like the developer user in this case. Yeah, so we're the one calling render. We're acting like the user here. We're building the login form. We're typing like the user would, clicking on the submit button. We wait for the loading thing to go away like the user would, and then we verify that the UI has been updated as we expect. But all the while, we are mocking out the backend, and so that's like outside of that boundary where we're thinking, okay, let's kind of re-implement what's actually going to happen as simply as possible. So that is your answer right here. And well, yeah, I'll just give you this yeah, mock out what the on submit is doing. There you go. Hopefully that answers your question. Good luck. Okay, and we talked to Edmund. Oh, Edmund, didn't you say you had 2 questions?
Yeah, sorry, this was the
second.
the question. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I totally spaced.
It's okay.
Okay, so use ref. Oh yeah. Was this the one? No. This was somebody else I was talking with where they passed a ref.value and it was working, but it wasn't actually working. They were looking at the wrong app. They were like changing code over here and looking at a different app, which I know we've all done. I certainly do that all the time. Anyway, so you got to use ref, and you are using that. Wait, where is use ref? Oh, down here. You have your comp ref. You're passing that. Okay, yeah, content current. You've got the current and you've got the content, and yeah, we click that.
So if you look at
it's on the
the
logs.
console.
Yeah. So your question is, why is this undefined?
Why is the first one ref content? Why is it showing new state instead of the default state? Because default state is the initial value, but it seems like it's able to capture the new value even before the updated function is called.
I see. Yeah, that's probably a function of the console, actually. So if you were to do this, say text content, now you'll see that.
Oh,
so
wow.
what the console is doing is it's showing you the DOM node, and then it's just like keeping that updated. So because that is still the DOM node, it's just being mutated, and it's just also mutating that value.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and actually the Chrome DevTools will do the same thing. It's a feature that is very confusing sometimes. Yeah, same situation in here as well. So
okay.
yeah, but if you bring it down to a primitive value, that primitive values can't be mutated, then yeah, you're solid.
Okay, that makes sense. So in this case, when we are passing ref as a prop, is there any difference if we were to pass the entire ref versus passing ref.content?
The difference, yeah, that's a good question. The difference is that I cannot reassign this value to anything else. I can't say like my thing, but I can reassign this to my thing, right? So it depends on what you need to do. I can't give you a recommendation because it'll be different for every use case, but in general, there's a principle called the principle of least power, where you want to give things or accept. So if you're the one creating the abstraction, you want to accept the least amount of power that you could possibly that you need to do your job. And so that will drastically simplify things. So an example of this is if you're making an avatar component that just shows the user's profile page, you want to accept just the image source and the alt text and nothing else. Alternatively, you might accept the entire user object and only use those properties. But that violates the principle of least power, and the effect that would have is you could say sometime in the future you're coming in to maintain this and you're looking at the avatar component and it accepts the user, and now you're like, oh shoot, I need to make sure that I pass along their address still or whatever, but it's not using the address. And so yeah, principle of least power. So in practice, I would generally recommend just passing the actual value itself unless you needed to imperatively reassign it at some point or mutate it. Typically, you probably don't want to do that. But yeah, there could be situations where you may. The other thing is actually that the other situation where you may need to pass the ref itself is if you need to have access to the current value or whatever the latest current value is, because as you can see here, we get undefined at the start. And that's because this ref dot or ref content dot current is actually not set until after all of this stuff renders. And so when handle click is created, this ref content current is actually undefined when this print function or print component is rendered. And so because that's undefined, handle click closes over that undefined value. And even though the actual current value gets updated later, that ref content current is a separate variable. It was pointing at undefined. And so that's why we get this undefined here. So that's another situation where if you needed to have access to whatever the current value ends up getting assigned to, then yeah, you'd have to pass the whole ref rather than just the dot current in that situation too. And actually, in the world of refs, that's probably more common. If you're using a ref, you probably need to pass the entire ref rather than just the current value.
Okay, thanks a lot. That makes sense. Appreciate your reply.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the question. All right, Peter, hello. In Remix, I lazy fetch data not needed for initial render. So not SSR, not in the loader or whatever. We'll take, why is that taking forever to load? Hopefully GitHub is, yeah, okay, good. If there's a better way, render then fetch from use effects, let me know. Can ITS type the API route? Yeah, okay, great. I love this question, Peter. So what you've got is you have this use question state in URL hook, which presumably is used at some point in some route. Yeah, so this is not a route, it's a hook for this. And you want to, you do not want to have this rendered initially when you get onto the page for some reason or another. But it looks like you do want this to be requested as soon as a component that uses this function is being rendered. So first I want to just look at that really quick, where that's actually being used. We'll look at questions. And oh, temp page ID, huh? Probably, yeah, probably the index, I guess. Here we go. Okay, so you've got, this is going to be used in the app. So all you're trying to accomplish is you don't want this fetch call to happen on the server for who knows what reason. There could, the best reason for this is what this thing is doing, which we can actually find in here. Here you've got your resource route. So this could be slow. That's like the biggest reason why you'd want to do this is you want your initial page load to be fast. You're okay showing a speed or a spinner of some kind until we actually end up loading all of this data. So that's the only reason I can think of why you'd want to do it this way. Otherwise, if it's like nice and fast, then why don't you just have it there on the server render and not pay for the layout content layout shift. So acting under that assumption, this is conceptually, this is the best way to do this. I would not do it with a regular fetch call. I would instead use the use fetcher hook. But stay tuned because I have something even better than this. So if we go use fetcher, this is what you're looking for. And this will allow you to do the same thing. And in fact, I've got, let's see, stream away the wait talk. I demoed this. So in apps, client-side fetch, actually, you know what? I've got an even better one in the advanced remix workshop, where we have an example of client-side fetching. And the reason it's an example and not an exercise is because you don't want to do it this way. But this is very similar to what people would think most of the time, and actually may be required if your particular host doesn't support streaming. So you may need to do this if you're on like Netlify or Vercel on the regular functions offering. Anyway, we're on sales, customers, customer ID. So right here, this is how I do this is with use fetcher. And so I'll stick that right here. And this is just calling the same route. It's calling itself. You could put this in a resource route like you're doing, no problem. I'm kind of cheating because I didn't want to make a resource route where I say, hey, if the URL includes invoice details, now we're going to do this. And so that will respond to this fetcher. It works fine. I don't have any problem with it. But yeah, so you've got that as your option, or as an option. And that's what I would use. I would use fetcher. The benefit of this is that on mutations, this will get rerun. And you have all of the state for the state of the promise managed for you and everything. So this is the way I would do it if I was doing client-side fetching. However, you don't have to do client-side fetching, not very soon anyway, because in the actual finished version of this, in the workshop, if we look at the defer API, then we're in routes, app, sales, customers, customer ID. Instead, we use this fancy defer thing. We have this get customer details. That's the slow thing, so that it can be a promise. And we pass that as a property on one of the objects of defer. So now we've got that promise. And then down in here, our data is actually going to have a promise. It feels like promise teleportation. Really, it does. Like we made a promise on the server and I get that promise on the client. That's not exactly how it works because, of course, you can't transfer promises across the network, but that's how it feels. And so this data has a promise on it. That's this customer details that you pass to the await function. And then you have your suspense fallback. So boom, that's really nice because that's declarative loading state management. You have an error element, so there's some more declarative niceness there. And then you have this render callback, so a render prop here, where it accepts the resolved value of whatever you pass to the resolve prop. And then poof, there you go. So you could do that exact same thing. The only requirement here is that you support streaming because this is part of the how this all works. Let me share this right here also. And then we'll go to entry server. So this is how you support streaming. This is like copy paste this. That's basically it. You don't really need to do much else. So you have render to pipeable stream. The one drawback or challenge that you're going to face if you switch to render to pipeable stream is figuring out how to make this work with CSS and JS. I'm pretty sure you'll be fine. Just on this, I actually have no idea how you do this with CSS and JS. Stop using CSS and JS, I guess. But anyway, unless you count Tailwind as CSS and JS, some people do. And I that would work. But anyway, you have this set up, and then you can use the defer API. This is going to be released in the coming weeks, and it's pretty solid. I'm not going to necessarily recommend that you do this, but I'm not going to tell on your mom if you do. And if I were in your position, I probably would just use defer. But yeah, so oh, and one other thing, the reason why this is so nice is that it's just a really nice API. It's nice and simple. You don't have to worry about use effect or anything. But also it's a way better user experience because what you have now with client-side fetching is you go to the server to render, then it comes back to the client, and then the client's like, oh, I need some JavaScript, so let me go back to the server to get that JavaScript and CSS and stuff. And then the JavaScript executes and says, oh, I actually need more stuff. So now I'm going to go back to the server to go get that data, and then I'll send it back. And all the while, the user's waiting for that data to show up. So with the defer API, it's the user goes to the server says, oh, you're going to need some data. Let me go get that for you. And then it sends back the HTML. And when this is finished, it keeps this communication line open. That's the streaming bit of this. And so it's got that document and it's showing that loading spinner in place. And then it sends the finished stuff, the finished data, and renders it. So ultimately, it ends up being a lot faster for the user too, because we kick off the data request to go get all of that expensive data. So that is that's what I would recommend. Use defer. And if you cannot, for some reason, because you can't stream or whatever, then use fetcher at least. Okay, great. I just realized how many tabs I have open. Okay, the defer thing will work in Cloudflare Workers. Yes, it will, because Cloudflare Workers does support streaming. A worker is killed after sending the response. Haven't tried streamed response yet. Yeah, so it will stream. Totally will work with that. Stuff I load is hidden inside search field after the user types. So low priority load, but prefetched after initial load. Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Yep, that makes total sense. Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, now I want to see what that was, because that's not what it looked like, but I didn't look carefully enough. So now we go to app routes and index. Then we have questions here. Okay, so then, yeah, open question titles. Right, that makes sense. Open question titles, and that's rendered by the search thing. Yep, that makes sense. Cool. Yeah, sweet. Yeah, so it seems like, now that I think about that, this actually seems a bit more like what I yeah, this other thing that I want to show you. So advanced remix. So here we go. We go to final, and where is it? What did I call this? Yeah, I needed to change the name. Non-nav fetching, I think is what I called it. Needs to be, I think the name should probably be component or backend intelligent components, or backend aware components, I think is what I need to call it. But it's this resources thing. So directory doesn't have to be called resources, but what this is it's a resource route. It just exports the loader, and then it also exports a component. So this is not a convention. It's just like some component. Just don't call it error boundary, I guess. And it's a regular component, uses useFetcher. And what's cool about this is that it is making this request after, in this case, it's actually using downshift, use combo box. But as you type, it will submit the query to the backend to get those customers, to get the filtered list of customers. And then it's submitting it to this resource route. And so the component lives right next to the backend that it's talking to. And that's what's super cool about this. So I may be misunderstanding what you're actually doing. But if you are doing something similar to this, then that might be the approach that you take. It sounds like you want to prefetch this, which you totally can do. So like if you're okay just saying I'm gonna go, the user hasn't typed anything, I'm gonna go prefetch things for oh, actually, you know what, I'm guessing what you're doing is you're doing filtering on the client side. So you're like, give me all of the things and then I'll filter this on the client side. That being the case, defer is the right thing. But if you're like, oh, I want the user to be able to search as, and make network requests as they're typing, then this is what you want to do. So it kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish here. Yeah, so what was I saying? Oh, right. Yeah, prefetching. So prefetch, this probably isn't going to do what you need it to, because this is actually for prefetching an entire page. And that's not what you want to do. You just want to prefetch the resource route. And you could totally literally just say link rel prefetch on, actually, you know what? No. You even better. Right up here, just add a links export that that has a, I need some code here. So you say export const links, links function. Yes, thank you. And then return an array of links, and you'll have a rel prefetch, and then questions, all questions, or whatever that endpoint was. Boom, you've prefetched. Ta-da! So you could also do it that way, and then you can do your regular client-side use fetcher and all of that. And the browser is like, oh, hey, I've already got this. Boom, here you go. So that's another option for you there. Let me think. I'm not sure I totally understand the use case, but if what you're doing is I want to load all the stuff and then I want it to be ready for me when the user starts typing. So I do some client-side filtering, then I would use defer. If you're not like feeling great about using something that's not officially released yet, then I would at least do this so that you can get it, start fetching as soon as possible. It's not going to make a huge difference, but it will make enough, because then it can start fetching before the JavaScript even finishes loading. So that's actually quite useful. And then and I would also use fetcher instead. If what you're doing is like, I want the user to be able to type and filter stuff, but I also want to like have the top 10 and that comes back from if you don't provide a query or something like that, then yeah, this also works. But I would not use defer for that. I would do what I'm doing in that customer filter thing. So anyway, bunch of options. Hopefully one of them is what you're going for. Yeah, sweet. All right, good stuff. That was a fun one. Thank you for asking. Okay, we got Edmund's question. Wired up, what up? What about moving component logic outside the component itself? Some argue it's better to leave it outside the component. So this is a great question for the Call Kent podcast, by the way, which has unfortunately dried up a tiny bit on questions. So questions are welcome, but yeah, this would be a great one for that. But I'm going to answer you here because like you asked here. So yeah. Actually, you know what? I just noticed the time. I can't answer right here. I need to speed things up. So I'm going to ask, can you ask on calls, please? Because this is very much like you can hear it and we can talk about it and you don't need to see anything. Okay. We answered UV, got Edmund, got that. Great. That's it. I've got to run. Okay. Kaio, opinions on Playwright. Have I tried it? Yeah, could you ask this on calls also, please? Sorry, I don't like doing that normally, but I do have an appointment soon and I started late and it's my fault. Oh, you sent 2 questions in a row. I mean, where's the other question? Oh, maybe it's the rest of your message. Struggled convincing technical team of using E2E. Yeah, that's a great question. This one too, please. It's just a really good one for the Call Kent podcast, and I'd like to get more on there. Okay, sweet. Sorry about that, and I do need to run. Do you think render props is relevant? Should be done with the hook. Yeah, great. Could you ask this one on the Call Kent podcast too? Because I do got to run. Yeah, because that would be a good one. I do have opinions on that for sure. Okay, great. This actually works out nicely because I do got to go. Thanks everybody. It's been fun. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all in a future. My kids started school this week, and so we'll have more consistent. I do have like trips planned and stuff. So I think that I will be going next week. Like that this will work, happen next week again. But yeah, I'll try to keep my cancellations schedule updated on the Call Kent or the office hours page. So anyway, thanks everybody.